What's up, guys? I'm Brian, that's Troy, and this is Early Stoppage Podcast. Tonight we're breaking down UFC Fight Night Las Vegas 34 Prelims. First up, we got Austin Lingo versus Luis Saldana. This fight's pretty close in the books, with Saldana being a slight favorite at minus 135. In an interview, Saldana has already promised that this is going to be fight of the night, so that's great for the fans. Going to be a great one. They're going to really bang it out, hopefully. Saldana has a slight height and reach advantage, but nothing too crazy. Both these guys are coming off wins in their last fights. Both of them only have one win in the UFC right now, so they're looking to expand on that. Saldana has a good win over Ultimate Fighter contestant Vince Murdoch, who's clearly shown that he's a good fighter. The interesting thing to take into account is that Saldana has been fighting professionally for almost 6 years longer than Lingo, and I think when both of them are young and new to the sport in their careers, that experience is really going to take a role in this fight. I think this is going to be a fun one, but with the idea that this may be fight of the night, it's a little sketchy to bet on. If I had to pick, I'd take Luis Saldana. However, I think I'm going to stay away from this fight. What do you think, Troy?
I think I'm definitely going to take Luis Saldana because I always back these fight-ready guys in these close matchups. Luis Saldana just switched his camp. Captain Eric Albarracin, Henry Cejudo, optimizing their physical advantages to a game plan to get them finishes. That's what I think is going to happen here. I think Austin Lingo doesn't telegraph his kicks on the feet, and he's pretty smooth. But he doesn't have the most well-rounded game, and he has a pretty stumpy physique. He almost looks like a tree stump. And I think Luis Saldana, chiseled out of stone and now going to fight ready, is really going to bring the heat to him. And I think he's going to get a first-round finish here by knockout. Moving on next to the bantamweight division, we've got the boy, Brian Kelleher, coming out of Long Island versus Domingo Pilarte, the malnourished 6-foot-tall bantamweight. Brian Kelleher trains at the gym that I also go to, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. He also trains at Long Island MMA. And Brian Kelleher is a COVID-19 all-star. He's got a bunch of wins against guys coming off the Contender Series, a couple rough matchups versus Ricky Simón and Cody Stamann, who agreeably are top guys in the division that arguably just do everything that Brian does better. Better offensive wrestling, better jiu-jitsu, better stand-up. But those were tough matchups, and I think in this matchup, this is heavily favorable for Brian because Domingo Pilarte, who allegedly is decent at grappling, when he gets people on the ground, he doesn't tee off on ground and pound shots. He just sticks in his position. And then on top of that, he doesn't chase submissions. You saw in his fight versus Journey Newsom, which I believe is now marked as a no contest, he got melted, ladies and gentlemen. And if you don't pull your head off the center line and you start slowing down against Brian Kelleher, you're going to end up on the highlight reel. And if Domingo Pilarte makes the mistake of shooting a double leg with his head on the outside, he's going to get put in the patented boom guillotine. But I actually think the way this fight's going to end is going to be a TKO on the feet in the second round because Domingo Pilarte slows down so much with how much weight he cuts. And I'm putting this out there openly. I'm very biased towards Brian. I'm not in love with the price tag at minus 170, minus 140. That would be something that I'd really love to pull the trigger on. I think I'm going to have some small action on this because you got to support the guys that are training at your gym. But you know, at minus 170, I wouldn't hate a stab at that either. And I'm going to take Boom by second round TKO over Domingo Pilarte.
See, Troy, I agree with you that Boom's winning this fight. However, I got Kelleher by submission. And I really think that the only sketchy part, I think Kelleher is significantly better than Pilarte. He has more than triple the amount of fights that Pilarte has. However, obviously the height and reach difference is a little sketchy. Brian Kelleher is 5'6" with a 64-inch reach, whereas Pilarte's 6 foot and a 74-inch reach. So I really don't think Kelleher wants this on the feet at all. I think he's going to work in close and get this on the ground. Kelleher is very clearly a better grappler, and I really think that he's going to get a takedown early, or if he does play with him for the first round, tire him out, then second round finish. I really think that Kelleher wins this via submission, and hopefully let's see that guillotine. But the next fight, this is my lock of the night. Malecki versus Josiane Nunes. I know Troy thinks it's crazy that this is my lock of the night. You got to be degenerate to be betting on this. So this is Malecki's 5th pro fight and 3rd in the UFC. Nunes' ninth pro fight and 1st in the UFC. And at first I was like, who is Nunes? She's 7-1. Obviously she seems to have more experience. But then I looked deeper into her record, her 7 wins, her opponents have a combined record of 1-16. Her one loss was against someone that had a winning record. I believe she was 17-1. And so it really shows that Nunes can only beat these people that have 0 or no wins. Most of her fights were against people that it was their only fight or they were 0-5. And so whereas Malecki has 2 wins in the UFC, so I really think that she's going to dominate this. And she's the favorite at -155. I think she's going to pick Nunes apart on the feet, and then if it gets to the ground, submit her. I really just don't see Nunes having a path to victory. She hasn't fought anyone. She has 0 wins over anyone decent. And yeah, I'm taking Malecki. She's going to pick her apart. And she's 5'9" with a 74-inch reach, which is crazy compared to Nunes. Nunes only 5'2" with a 67-inch reach. I really just don't think Nunes has any advantages over Malecki. What do you think, Troy?
I think you're a monster, but to give great content, I'm going to give you the flip side of this. You're criticizing Nunes for having a low caliber of competition, which I completely agree with, and that's because the amateur scene in Brazil, you're allowed to enter it when you're 16, whereas in the United States it's 18, and you're allowed to pad records a lot easier down there. And her one loss against someone with a record, she actually left her gym then and joined forces with that fighter and that gym, who is home to a UFC veteran, Talia Santos, who is not bad, and that's who she's training with. And although Bia Malecki is huge for the weight class and is winning some fights, arguably she could be the slowest fighter in the entire division. And with that being said, she doesn't take her head off the center line, and I think she's vulnerable to combinations over 3 and 4. And with that being said, I really wouldn't be shocked if Nunes got her out of there early with a surprising out of nowhere women's finish. You know I'm going TKO crazy on this card. We got not a lot of name value. You know there's TKOs coming out like crazy on this card. Josiane Nunes might sweep one out, and we'll say, Brian, we're going to get an L on your lock of the night tally, even though we're both 1-0 right now.
No, Troy. Bia Malecki, hammer money line, -155. Let's get this.
Okay, moving on to the next fight in the light heavyweight division. We've got 2 Dana White Contender Series veterans in here with William Knight versus Fabio Cherant. Shout out our boy Bailey and shout out Fabio, who's boys with Bailey. Those are who we're riding with in this fight and openly admitting the bias. We've got Fabio in his last fight, who had a loss against Alonzo Menifield on short notice. You got to give him props for taking that fight. The odds stacked against him. The former LFA champion. You know LFA, highly credible organization. You win a championship there, you're almost guaranteed a UFC contract. This matchup, I think, is a lot more favorable for him because William Knight and Fabio both aren't the biggest 205-pounders in the division. But I have realized that Fabio down the stretch of the fights maintains his cardio well and manages his energy well and has a sneaky good submission game, contrary to what happened in his last fight versus Alonzo Menifield with the rare Von Flue choke. But you're going to see William Knight come out hard and channel that anime energy in the first round of this fight, and we're going to see him buzzsaw out and see his lack of fight IQ play in this fight. And I think these big plus odds at Fabio is almost a steal. Plus 185, where the recency bias is all over here like crazy. Plus 185, you got to take that. And you know what? I understand there's a common opponent in Alexa Kammer, who is Stipe's training partner, that Fabio lost to on Dana White's Contender Series and William Knight beat. Guys, styles make matchups, and those are completely different fights in different times. And especially this early in their budding careers where they don't have too much experience, you can't take too much away from that, and you have to expect these guys are making adjustments this young in their career when they're taught these veteran lessons. And you know what? Knowing what it's like to fight a top 15 guy like Menifield is a good thing to have under your belt, and I'm going to take Fabio by 3rd round submission. What do you got, Brian?
Troy, I agree with you. I think everyone's counting Fabio Cherant out of this after his last fight. He took that fight on such short notice. Honestly, with a full training camp, the water buffalo's coming. He's ready to fight. He's coming out hungry. I think that his clear path to victory is getting this fight on the ground, using his jiu-jitsu. William Knight is more of a striker. He doesn't really have that jiu-jitsu that Cherant has. And yeah, as Troy mentioned, Cherant was the LFA light heavyweight champion. that takes some skills to get there. People are thinking that his last fight defines him. No, he's coming out strong. He's winning this fight. Plus 185 odds. That's great value. I'm hammering that, honestly. But let's move on to the next fight. Roosevelt Roberts versus Ignacio Bahamondes. Both of these guys are also Contender Series alum. Roberts has a little more experience in the UFC. He's 4-2 in the UFC right now, where Bahamondes just lost. He's only 0-1. He's looking for his first win. Both these guys are pretty early into their careers. They're both coming off losses in this last fight, so I think this could have potential of being a very big scrap, and I don't know about fight of the night, but maybe, who knows. I think that Roberts, though, is clearly more well-rounded. He's a older, more experienced fighter, and I really think that he should be more of a heavyweight. I believe he's only minus 145. I'm saying that he honestly has the advantage in striking and grappling, so I think I'm taking Roberts by stoppage, and I'm leaning towards first-round submission or first-round TKO. I think Bahamondes, honestly, is going to struggle a lot. I think he bit off more than he could chew with Roosevelt Roberts. What do you think, Troy?
I think I could give you guys a pick, but I can't give you a bet because this one's an absolute sketch fest. We've got Roosevelt Roberts, who there is some recency bias in his line, where he's been struggling in his last few fights, versus Ignacio Bahamondes, who got absolutely blitzed by the midget refrigerator John Makdessi, who has done unnamable things to get out of his gym that I cannot mention on this podcast, and he lost to him. Overall, I think Ignacio is very green, and I think he's lacking a well-rounded mixed martial arts game. And I think Roosevelt Roberts, with mixing in the strikes, it'll be easy for him to get to the body lock and get this down to the mat. And I don't know what the odds are, but there's probably huge plus odds by Roosevelt Roberts by submission. And you know what? I'm not high on either of these guys, but just stylistically, I feel like Bahamondes has a huge hole in this game. Y yo creo que Ignacio Bahamondes es lo peor peleador en el división, which means I think he's the worst fighter in the division. This guy's too green. He's here too early. He can't get this shit done. And you know what, guys? I'm rolling with Roosevelt Roberts by submission. There's going to be a ton of finishes tonight, guys.
Roberts is looking for that performance bonus, Troy. I really think he's got this. Who we got next?
Oh, yeah, and that's why tattooed on his chest, and then his nickname is Bout Money, Roosevelt Roberts, and that's facts. You know he's going for that $50K check. And moving in to the last fight of our breakdown and the first fight of the night, we've got Sasha Palatnikov versus Ramiz Brahimaj. You'll know Sasha Palatnikov for his huge upset win over Louis Kosi, which does not mean much because the Kosi brothers, last time I checked, are nothing to write home about. And they were just put on the Contender Series because having two winning brothers will look good on ESPN, right, Brian? Right. His brother got flatlined by Philip Rowe a couple weeks back, and most likely that's what's going to happen here, but it's not going to be a flatline. It's going to be a submission. We've got Ramiz Brahimaj, who everyone was high on before his last fight to Max Gribbin, where this man's ear exploded in the octagon, and it was a doctor's stoppage. Before that fight, guys, people were willing to pay huge minus money on this guy. And Sasha Palatnikov, out of nowhere, is just because he beat Louis Kosi, is deserving of a favorite spot here and a lean and is going to win this fight? I don't think so, guys. I think Ramiz is going to easily be able to get this one to the ground. Palatnikov, the one thing he does have is he's able to dig deep, but when Ramiz brings this to the ground, I feel like he's just going to have his way with him. He can pass with the body lock on the ground, Nicky Rod style, and he's going to attack these submissions aggressively, get after it, and get it done while they're dry and not sweating. I'm going to have to stick with Ramiz Brahimaj, and this is a fight that screams recency bias all over it, just because Palatnikov had a huge, probably, arguably, what is it? I think it's statistically the biggest underdog win of the year so far in the UFC, right?
Oh, yeah. That was like plus 400 or 500 odds.
So this guy is going to get respect on the odds now. Don't fall into the trap, ladies and gentlemen. Take Ramiz Brahimaj and maybe even submission. We're going finish crazy. It's going to be a violent night, ladies and gentlemen. Brian, what do you think about
Troy,
this one?
I agree with you that Brahimaj is winning this fight. People don't forget that in his last fight, Sasha lost to Impa Kasagne, who, honestly, he's a decent fighter, but still, he got submitted. I believe it was the first round. Sasha probably has the advantage in striking, but Brahimaj definitely has the grappling advantage, like you were saying, maybe a submission here. I want to say that if Brahimaj's ear stays together in this fight, I think we all win. No one wants to see that happen again. But the way I see this going is that Palatnikov may win the first round, but then after that, I think Brahimaj is going to be too powerful, really working wrestling and grappling. And I think I'm taking Brahimaj money line, but I may take him by decision, honestly. I think if he uses his wrestling, this may just be a more grapple-heavy fight that neither of them really go in for the finish. But that's our thoughts, our predictions. Let us know what you think, and feel free to leave a comment, roast us, tell us who you think is good, who's bad, and let's see Bia Malecki win this lock of the night.
All right, guys. And one more thing before you guys go. We didn't want to make its own video because it goes without saying Kayla Harrison is getting a finish tomorrow. If this video is out in time, that is going to happen. And number 2, before we make the breakdown, breaking news, Tresean Gore is out of his tough finale fight versus Brian Battle, and Brian Battle is going to verse Gilbert Urbina. Spoiler alert. Turn this off if you haven't watched Tough. Gilbert Urbina got flattened by Tresean Gore in the semifinals of the tournament, and he's versing Brian Battle. And also, of course, Ricky Tercios is versing Brady Heistad. So we're looking forward to bringing that to you guys on the August 28th card, Chikadze versus Barbosa. And we'll see you guys later.
Peace.